Okay, so in this episode of the HX1 tonner build, going to get stuck into gapping all these panels and getting everything all nice and uniform, ready to start applying body filler and smoothing everything off. So these things never really came out with good panel gaps from factory, so I think, yeah, now's the time to get them all right. It definitely finishes off the car if you've got nice panel gaps. So in the last episode, I showed you guys what I'd done to the sill panel to bring that out flush with the door. So I need to finish that repair off. This reverse scoop has arrived for the bonnet as well. So this one is from Repli Glass. They're a Queensland company. So I'm pretty happy with that. I think it's gonna be a good fit. So that one is a 4-inch reverse scoop. I was gonna go a 3-inch, but someone convinced me to go 4. And I'm actually, yeah, really happy with how that looks. I think the 4-inch was definitely a good choice. Anything over 4-inch, I think it looks a little bit weird. Yeah, 6 inches just look a bit weird, I think. So I think, yeah, 4 inches is a good size. So yeah, that'll be another episode anyway, fitting that, that reverse scoop to the bonnet. So anyway, we'll get stuck into it. So I've just removed that door and I've just cut this sill panel back further up to this end here. So I was a bit restricted with that door on, I could only cut it up to here. So yeah, it was still sticking in a little bit. So I've cut that all the way back, brought it out, and all along there has been tacked in and it's nice and straight now. So I've just used the straight edge. So yeah, that's all ready to start welding all together. So there's obviously some pretty big gaps there. So what I've done is I've ordered off eBay some of this 3.2 millimeter TIG filler rod. So this, yeah, I'm gonna be able to fill the gaps just with this TIG filler rod. So this is just mild steel, so I'll just be able to weld to that and it's gonna fill the gap in. So I think there was a guy that commented I should use like coat hanger or something, but the reason why I did order this stuff off eBay is just because I'm going to be able to use it, because it's in meter lengths, I'm going to be able to use it to gap all the panels. So I think it's going to come up pretty nicely by, I'll be able to just take that back, grind that back a little bit and then weld this TIG filler rod in there, and it's going to be a nice sort of edge. So I think that's going to work out pretty good. So this was pretty hard to find around Brisbane here. Yeah, Bock didn't have any. I rang up a few engineering places, they had none, so I just ordered it off eBay. It's pretty hard to find. I'll just, yeah, put a link in the show notes for the eBay link. Okay, so I've got all the filler rods tacked in. So what I've done was cut them to length, put them in between the tacks, and then I just chucked them on this magnet and then just sat that magnet on there, and then that's held it in. Then just tacked the filler rods in. Down these ends here on both sides, I just welded that up. I didn't bother putting the filler rods in just because the gap wasn't that big. So yeah, now I'll just, yeah, work my way along and just tack everything in, get it all welded in there, and then I can grind it all back, and then yeah, the body filler will sort of take care of the rest. Okay, so that is all welded in and grinded back, so I think that's going to be not too bad. I can still feel some sort of waviness in this sill panel, but I think once I put a layer of body filler over that, that'll be fine. So what I'm going to do with this edge and this top is just go over just with the fiberglass filler, just to get a bit of strength up on this edge here. And then yeah, I'll just use the normal filler over the top. So that sill panel's all done. So I've put some body filler over the top and sanded it all back. So that is dead flat now. So really happy with how that's turned out. I've also just adjusted this angle just to follow this guard. So yeah, that sits in there nicely. That there needs body filler still, but I think that's come out pretty good. So I ended up using this Durablock. So I ordered a kit off eBay. So these kits come with the long one, you got a medium, a small, you got a round one, thinner ones. So yeah, that kit's yeah, really handy. And then I've got the 3M adhesive sandpaper to stick onto the Durablock. So I don't know why I hadn't got these earlier. These things are just awesome to work with, and they get the panels dead flat. So yeah, happy with how that's turned out. So now I need to just rehang these doors again, and then I can start looking at trying to get these gaps around here. So I've sort of grinded this back here. So this gap here is nice with the guard. So now I'll stick the door on and finish off the gaps around the door. Okay, so that door is hung. So I think that lines up all pretty well now. The sill panel lines up with the door now, so I'm happy with that. So what I'm going to do is start using some of the filler rod and go around some of the larger gaps and tighten them up. So I'll start with this section here. I think this should be pretty easy. I'll be able to just open the door and then weld that in. Okay, so I've got that filler rod tacked in, so I think that's going to turn out pretty nicely. It's a nice edge there, it's going to follow the cowl. So yeah, I'll go along and weld it all together, grind it back, and that should turn out pretty sweet. Okay, so that filler rod is welded in, so I think that's come out not too bad. I reckon the gap is probably a little bit bigger than what I would like, but I'm hoping that by the time you use a bit of body filler over the top, high build primer, a few coats of that, plus the base coat and the clear, I think that's probably going to close that gap in slightly anyway. So it probably will be, yeah, I'm hoping that'll be pretty good once all that's painted on. So I'm going to go on to this back section now. So just along this gap here, so it's a good 10 mil in there. So I'll use a filler rod. I might have to bring the filler rod out a little bit in the middle section and because that's pretty thick in there. So I've just welded in this section here, and what a difference that makes compared to that bottom section. Yeah, it's a nice even gap there now. So what I've done was just use the rod, so tacked it in up the top, sort of bent it around, tacked it in, bent it around, tacked it in, and just follow the contour of the door. And I've just cut it back here. So what I'll do is I'll just start again here with another piece of rod, and then just work my way back down. So it's a new day, nice and wet here in Brisbane, and also we're in lockdown. But fortunately for me, I really don't care because I'm in my safe space, in my happy place, working on the tonner here. So this morning I've finished off this rear section on the left-hand side door. So I just welded that rod in on the bottom there. So I think that's come out pretty good. It's nice even gaps. So now I just need to go on to the front section. So around here is pretty good. So down here, it's a little bit wider down here. So what I might do is just put the rod, fill it up to probably around about here somewhere, and then I'll just kind of blend that in. I might have to just sand that back a little bit as well, just to get that even with the door. But yeah, I think that shouldn't be too bad. I'm gonna have to pull this guard off again. So it's a very tedious job sort of doing these gaps, because it's not so bad the rear section, but in this section here, you can't really get in there. So you got to pull that guard off. So. Okay, so this left-hand side is all gapped. So I think I have a new appreciation for a good panel gap after doing it myself. It is definitely time consuming trying to get everything right. So when you sort of move one thing or adjust one thing, it puts something else out. There's a lot to sort of get aligned with the seal panel, this guard, the door, and the cowl. So yeah, it's very time consuming. But anyway, I think it looks pretty awesome. I'm really happy with how that's turned out. So I've got a nice 5mm gap pretty much going around the whole door. So with this front section, I ended up welding a rod from the bottom all the way up to the top. Now, once I'd done that, the gap was pretty sort of thin. It was probably too thin up the top. And so what I had to do is get this cutting disc. So I just used a 1mm cutting disc and then put that in the gap and just slowly grinded the gap out till it was about 5mm. So just have to be careful. I know you're not meant to use a 1mm cutting disc to grind things back, but if you don't put a lot of pressure on the disc and just take it slowly, eventually, yeah, you'll get that gap out to suit the rest of the door. So the reason why I'd done that, it was just, yeah, it would have been too much time to pull the guard off, grind it back with like a flapper disc on the edge, put the guard back on, test like to see what it looks like. Then if it's not right, you have to pull it off again and then grind it back. It just would have been a lot of pulling that guard on and off to get it right. So doing it with the guard on and the door closed like that, it definitely saved a lot of time, and yeah, it come out, yeah, really nice gap there. So around the top here, that's also come out really nice. So yeah, that gap there is nice and follows with the guard. And I ended up just building up a little bit of weld here just to kind of blend that curve in a little bit. It was sort of come to a kind of a square point, so I've just sort of blended that in. But yeah, that's the left-hand side done. So moving on to the right-hand side, I think it's just pretty much going to be exactly the same as the left. Now this door is sitting pretty nicely. I'll have to just, yeah, put a bit of a rod in here. The back of the door sits nicely, except for that middle section. It's a big gap there. Now this front, the guard sits up a little bit higher with the cowl here. So it's probably like a good 2 or 3 mil sits higher. So what I'm gonna do is, I'll show you in here, but if you can see that, so where that bolt goes through into the guard, that nut is pretty low, and what's happening is this bolt is pretty much bottomed out right on this guard here, the cowl. So what I think I'm going to do is try and cut that nut out and lift that up higher, so then I'll be able to drop this guard down a little bit, and then it's going to sit up higher, because yeah, that just looks shit, and there's a big gap here where it's been elongated. So yeah, I'm really not happy with that. So I think that's the first thing I'm going to do, is pull this guard off, see if I can lift this nut up a little bit to drop that down and get that lined up with the cowl. So I've just removed this guard. So as you can see, I've just marked out this section that I'm going to cut out. So when I was on the car, I've sort of marked roughly where I want the hole to line up. So if I cut that rectangle out, flip it around, and then that's going to hopefully line up with where I've marked it. So that's cut out, I've flipped that around and tacked it in. So that lines up pretty nicely with their marks. So I'll weld that in, and that should turn out pretty good. Okay, so that's worked out pretty good. That bolt hole lines up nicely. It sits up a lot higher now, and there's plenty of adjustment in this guard now. So I was able to drop this guard down, and that lines up pretty well with the cowl now. So I've had to also use a spacer in between here. So if I didn't use a spacer, it was pretty much hitting this cowl. So I've just used that spacer to space it out a little bit. Hopefully that's not going to be too much of an issue once I fit the bonnet and get that aligned, but we'll have to see once I fit it up. So that is pretty much the right-hand side done now as well. So I didn't bother filming just because it was exactly the same as the left. So yeah, this gap around the back of the door, yeah, that is nice. This area come up really nice as well. Everything sort of aligns and is flush. And then yeah, this gap here come out nice as well. So I just welded a rod on the from the bottom to the top on the front, and then on the rear I just welded sort of about half the door, as the gap down there was pretty good, and then just sort of blended it in. This section here, it's not too bad. You can just see it's a little bit, that angle doesn't flow with the seal panel. I can't really do much about it just because that seal panel is, I just sanded that back to get that angle right, but that seal panel is now touching metal, so I can't go any further. So it's not too bad. It's not super noticeable, but yeah, I'm not really sure if I can really do anything with that. But yeah, other than that, everything is looking really nice. Nice tight gaps. That's how I like them. So I've just been going around and getting everything all aligned and flush. So to do that, I've just been using this spoon. Anywhere that it's low, I've just been prying it out with the spoon, and any sort of high areas, I've just been using the flat-faced hammer and just tapping it. Just be gentle with the flat-faced hammer. Obviously, there is strength around in these areas just where the door skin wraps around onto the inner section. So there is strength, so you can sort of tap it and manipulate it. So yeah, obviously the tighter the flusher you can get it mounted, there's just going to require less body filler when it comes time to smoothing it off with all the body filler. So yeah, that's pretty much all the doors, the guards, everything all gapped now. So I'm really happy with how it's looking. It is very time consuming. It took longer than what I was expecting. I thought I'd be able to get it done in a couple of days, but it's pretty much been like 4 or 5 days to get all that aligned properly and gapped. So very time consuming. So I just need to mount the bonnet. So I'm waiting on the bonnet hinges to arrive. I've ordered some billet ones. So yeah, once they arrive, I can get the bonnet on and get that gapped, and then start doing the nose cone and get that gapped as well. But I think that's going to be relatively easy, the bonnet, I'm hoping anyway. So yeah, that's pretty much it for now. So yeah, I've still got to shave these door handles, get them done, and then I can start using the body filler and going around and smoothing everything off. So I've just got that bonnet sitting on there loosely, and the gaps line up pretty well. So obviously I still need to mount it to the hinges and mount it properly, but so far it sits in there pretty well and the gaps are pretty good. I've also just sat the scoop on there loosely as well, and I think that looks pretty bloody tough. So I'm happy with that scoop. I'm thinking in the next episode, I'll probably strip this bonnet back and mount the scoop properly, get the bonnet mounted properly onto the car as well. Hopefully these hinges arrive. So if you like what I do and want to help support the channel, then head over to the Shenke Garage merch store. So there's t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, various products there, different colors. I'll put a link in the show notes and a card up in this corner. So yeah, click either or. Also hit the like and subscribe button if you haven't already. So yeah, really thankful for the support so far. I just hit 3,000 subscribers the other day. I've already up to 3,500. So yeah, the channel is definitely growing, and a big thank you to you guys for supporting. So yeah, we'll leave with that, and we'll see you next time on Shenke Garage. Cheers guys.